Hey Circuit, welcome back to another week of online service. Hey, we hope that you are watching on YouTube or engaging with us on live with the chat, and that you jump on to Zoom small groups. Hey, you can invite a friend to be on your Zoom small groups with you. So share the link, do that. Hey, also shout out to you last week. You guys served by delivering flowers, by writing cards in such an incredible way. And so I just want to thank you for that and say that I am really excited for the ways that you're showing up right now. But without that, let's start with a time of singing.
Good evening, Circuit. Welcome back to the update. I'm your host, Caleb Hatch. I hope you all had a fantastic Easter weekend, and hopefully that snow's all gone for good now. So with that, let's get right into the news. John Cromer, CEO and owner of the Cromer Candle Company, has just released a new line of scented candles called the Shepherd Stink 6-Pack, which consists of 6 different candles scented Communion Bread and Wine Divine, Junior High Mission Trip Boys Room Delight, Lutheran Coffee, Circuit Sweat, Sloppy Joe Night, and Christy Wallace's Essential Oil Concoction. You can buy your own pack on CromerCandleCompany.com. Now over to Katie Kangas for this week's weather.
Hi, I'm Katie Kangas, and I'm out here in nature. It's pretty neat, not gonna lie. And so, today it's a little cloudy out here by this bridge. It's starting to snow too. That's all. Back to you, Caleb.
And that was this week's weather. Thank you, Katie. If you're anything like me, you've probably been getting pretty sick of having the same old snacks over and over lately. So we're gonna head over to the Waldschmidt household where they're gonna show us some fun ways to spice up your quarantine snacking.
Hello, I'm Elijah Waldschmidt. Today I'm going to show you how to make a quarantine snack. Some things you'll need are Parmesan cheese, your choice of olives. I have chosen jalapeno stuffed, some Cool Whip, and some salsa, and then you want to mix those together. And then after that, you want to take your choice of Cheez-Its. I have chosen bacon and cheddar duo, and your choice of candy, and I have chosen Swedish fish. Callie and Caleb are here to help me to taste it. I give that a solid 8 out of 10.
I'd say a 5 out of 10.
I'd say 10 out of 10.
Thank you.
Boy, does that make me real hungry. Now we're gonna head over to Fred Larson for this week's sports report and update on the Impossible Shot.
Old Spice. Sportscast. Impossible Shot. Let's see the shots. Nice shots.
Wow, Fred, those are some pretty crazy shots there. In fact, we even had Zion Williams take the Impossible Shot this weekend, and, well, not to much surprise, he did miss it. Unfortunately, however, we did lose the footage, but take my word for it. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'm your host, Caleb Hatch, and we'll see you next week on The Update. And as always, just reach out and grab it.
It's me, Anna. Today I'm just gonna walk you through 3 of the most important things to remember while you're in quarantine. So the first is to stay hydrated. So we got some water here. And we're just gonna, drink up. Yay! Yay! Gonna get some exercise. Dogs love to run. So do humans. Agility. To help around the house, we like to serve the people we're closest to. So, just fold some laundry. Just good enough. And then I'm pretty efficient here in the Arlen household. Gotta make sure you get all the crinkles out. Oh, beautiful. So, I think that's enough laundry, Okay. Okay.
Hey Circuit, welcome to week 3 of a series we're calling Beneath the Surface. Essentially, we're addressing this idea that as we get quieter, as our lives get less busy, we are left with some of these kind of feelings and emotions to kind of sit in, some of these thoughts that we might be having. And so what we want to do is invite God into the mix of this, allow Him to do the healing and the working so that we can not only be healthy people now, but in the future, so that we can equip ourselves for these if these feelings arise later in life. And tonight I want to talk a little bit about boredom. And really, boredom is this idea that we are constantly looking for activities or ways to actively engage or stimulate our mind. And all of a sudden, when that doesn't happen, we say to ourselves, oh, I'm bored. And we find ourselves, well, I need to fill it with something. And so I think what happens is all of these activities actually build habits. And these habits can either be helpful or harmful to us. And of course, I'm going to say we want helpful habits. When I think about this concept, I think about King David. Now, King David is this guy who's been anointed by God. He is to lead the Israelites, and he is to complete the mission right here on this earth. He is to glorify God in whatever he does. And there's this one scene in the Bible where David decides to stay back. He's supposed to go off to battle, lead his army, but he decides to stay back and send somebody else in his place. So David is now hanging out, just probably kicking dirt around, and one night he wakes up and he's standing on the roof, and then all of a sudden he sees a cute girl, and he's like, dang. But here's the problem. He invited her over, and I'm not going to go into detail, but essentially he ended up sinning. He ended up getting into a situation that was less than great, more harmful to him than helpful. And we see that because of this time and space away from what he was supposed to be doing, leading his army, going into battle, he chose an activity that actually caused more harm. Later in the narrative, we see just a domino effect of the problems with David actually engaging in an inappropriate relationship with this girl. But I also think of this character, Paul. Paul is an apostle, and he's going around preaching the gospel, spreading the good news of Jesus. And because of this, he actually ends up in prison. And he literally is chained. He is in prison. He can't go anywhere. Unlike David, he's literally stuck in that one space. And that might be where some of you are feeling, honestly, is stuck in a prison. But what Paul does is he continues on what God called him to do. He continued witnessing to even the guards. He continued praying for all of these other church leaders. He continued writing letters of encouragement and wisdom and things for the church leaders and churches so that they could feel connected and have help and have encouragement. And he continued on the mission that God gave him to do. What am I saying? I'm again saying we have two characters who have time and space. Paul has time and space because he's in jail. He could have gave up. He could have said, well, this sucks. I'm in jail. Looks like I can't do anything that God called me to do anymore. Right? Maybe you're thinking, well, since I can't do anything, I can't go outside, I can't go visit friends, I can't go to school, I can't go to sports, I might as well not do anything at all. And just kind of lounge around, watching 8 hours of Netflix each day. Anybody been there? Amen. I have. Or maybe you're thinking, maybe you're more like David. And you're in this scenario where you're like, well, I kind of like not being in school, but I still need something to do. I guess I can look at my phone for things that kind of satisfy my needs. I guess I could watch these inappropriate shows on Netflix, Hulu, HBO to kind of satisfy whatever I'm trying to get at. You're in a situation like these two characters. But the thing of it is in this season of boredom, in this time in this moment where you have time and space, where you have margin, your schedule is cleared up, are you going to allow boredom to push you in the direction of harmful habits? Or Or are you going to allow this season of boredom to push you in the direction of helpful ones? And what we see is that in order to kind of navigate some of these helpful habits, we actually need to have discipline. And this discipline is something that Gabby's going to go into a little bit later in the second half of this talk. But one of the things that is so neat about Paul, real quick as I wrap up here, is that Paul, like I said, was in prison. And the one thing he clinged on to is Jesus. See, how did he have the encouragement to keep preaching, to keep even witnessing to the guards who put him in jail, to keep writing to all of these churches? Is because he had the power of Christ within him doing all of the work. Remember, this season we're inviting God to work in our lives, to help wrestle some of these feelings that we're having, like disappointment, right? Like anxiety and worry, and like boredom. Because like I said, boredom can push us in the direction of helpful habits or harmful ones. And so as we meditate on some of the things that we're doing in this season, some of the ways I just want us to meditate on this song that Mare and the team is going to sing. So please sing with us.
Just want you, nothing else, oh, nothing else, nothing else will do. I just want you, nothing else, nothing else, nothing else will do. I just want you, nothing else, nothing else, Jesus, nothing else will do. I just want you, nothing else, Jesus, nothing else will do. Caught up in your presence, I just wanna sit here at your feet. Caught up in this holy moment, never wanna leave. I'm not here for blessings, Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you do. I just want you.
Hey Circuit, so a few moments ago, Keith talked about our topic for this week, which is boredom. This idea of what we do when we're not really interested or engaged in what life has to offer us right now. And I think a lot of us obviously are experiencing that. But what Keith talked about is in boredom, we're either going to drift into habits that are unhealthy for us, or if we have discipline, if we remember what God is calling us to, we can actually create some good habits. And I think this idea of discipline is one that I just want to talk to you about for a couple of minutes here, because I think it can kind of be unfamiliar to us. You know, when we have you come to Circuit, one of the things that we value is that you have fun when you show up, that it's enjoyable, that it's exciting to you, even that you're kind of entertained through it. But right now in this season, a lot of those things that are entertaining and exciting aren't happening right now. And I remember kind of experiencing that when I first kind of started taking my faith seriously. Those first few months of faith were so exciting and fun, and it felt like every day. I was learning something new or talking to someone. It was really, really enjoyable. But then a few months in, I sort of got used to the routine of everything. That really what faith looked like was me kind of opening up my Bible and maybe going to a small group or a church service, but that was kind of what it was going to be. I remember feeling so frustrated and confused as to why this wasn't as fun as it used to be, as to why faith wasn't like this exciting thing, and I thought maybe I was doing something wrong. I thought maybe I had to change something, but as I've grown a few years, what I've realized is that is a really normal part of our life and our faith. That sometimes it's going to be fun and easy and we're going to enjoy God, and I believe that is God's heart for us. But other times we are going to have to, as part of following Jesus, endure and be disciplined through it. And in fact, the Bible actually tells us that this is what our life is going to look like at times. James says, "Count it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete and lacking in nothing." Later, James says, "Be patient, brothers and sisters, until the coming of the Lord. Behold, we consider those blessed who remain steadfast." Paul talks about having to train for faith, having to run the race of faith, and that how he has to be disciplined to keep running the race of faith all through his life. Jesus, Paul writes, for the joy set before him, endured the cross. All of three of these people write about a life of faith that isn't always easy and it isn't always fun. But what Jesus shows us and what we're invited into is a life that when we are disciplined, when we persevere, when we push past the times of our life when faith is hard, when faith is boring, that is, as James says, when we become mature, whole people that aren't lacking in anything. That is when the promise is that we even discover the joy of what it is to follow Jesus in the middle of it all. And so, Circuit, our hope for you is that you would have a life where you follow Jesus for all of it. And so, as hard as this time is, as bored as you might feel, how we choose to deal with that boredom, how we choose to be disciplined through it, is going to set us up so well for the future times in our life when faith gets hard, when life gets hard. So the invitation for us is to choose to be disciplined, is to choose to continue engaging in faith even when it isn't easy, even when it isn't fun, even when we're sad about those things in our lives that were going to be fun and easy, like a mission trip, that it can't happen anymore. We're going to trust and we're going to recognize that Jesus' promise is that he has endured the worst of it all for us by dying on the cross. And that actually through boredom, through suffering, through hardship, that is when we grow the most. That is when we become the people that God is calling us to be. We love you. We'll see you next week.
I count on one thing. This same God who never fails, will not fail me now. You won't
Gabby described this disciplined lifestyle, this lifestyle of being disciplined can actually lead us in a place where we move towards Christ and we find actually joy and peace, and we actually feel satisfied and full. And so, as I talked about earlier with Paul, he was in prison, but he didn't allow that to trap him. He actually took his prison and he made it a platform in which he continued to move closer to Christ, where he continued to spread the good news, where he continued out the mission God gave him in the first place. I don't know your mission. I don't know what God's calling you to, but I do know this. A disciplined lifestyle, a lifestyle moving closer and closer to Christ, right now in this season where we have a lot of time and space, can actually fortify us for the uncertain circumstances that are constantly coming our way. And so, I'm going to close in prayer. And would you just think about it this week as you kind of navigate some of this time, and what choices and decisions and habits are you going to move closer and closer to? God, thank you so much for the opportunity to just meet together as a community, even if it's virtually. God, I ask that you just be with everyone, that all the things that people are wrestling around with and dealing with, God, that you would just be in that you would walk alongside us and give us the strength, Lord. We can't do it on our own. We need you. So God, just bring us closer and closer to your goodness. We love you.